Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da.
Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to a brand new episode of Geek to Me Radio. Today, we are joined by actor Jim Piddock. We're talking about a brand new book that he's got coming out on March the 23rd that you're going to want to pick up. We're going to talk all about his 4 decades in Hollywood, the movies, the TV shows he's been in. We'll get into it all. Stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, 1 ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And if you're driving around the greater St. Louis area tonight, hearing us on the Big 550 KTRS, hello to you. Thank you for listening. If you're streaming this out there in the world via the KTRS stream, hello to you. And of course, if you're watching this on Instagram, if you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or Facebook, hello to you. And thanks very much for watching. Very excited for my guest tonight. I'm obviously a Christopher Guest fan, as most people who have a rational brain are. He's been in several of those. He's been in just a ton. I almost had to download an extra 5 or 6 pages of notes for all of the projects that he's worked on. I was going to ask you, is the last name Piddock or is it Piddock?
It's either. In England, it's Piddock, but in America, often Piddock, and I'm not fussy. I answer to both.
Okay, good enough. So you've got the new book that's coming out, all about your 40 years in Hollywood, part tell-all, part memoir. Right off the bat, I want to ask you, was this an idea that you had in the back of your mind, said, I should write a book, or was this something that someone said to you, hey, we should write a book, or something happened that said, hey, you know what, I should write a book?
Yeah, I'll tell you how it came about. I did something called, for the Screen Actors Guild, called Let's Talk About It Inside the Industry. And it was an evening in a theater, a 200-seat theater, and I was interviewed by a guy from the Wall Street Journal. And I just, I didn't prepare anything. I just did an hour talk of just telling stories. And he would ask me questions, and then a Q&A. And I had a really good time. And I realized I have a kind of a trove of these insane stories about, well, it's actually Hollywood, Broadway, because I had 3 great years of doing Broadway shows and some stuff a bit before that. So in Hollywood, I've been here since 1985. So you do the math. But then I came away thinking I might actually break my long theatrical hiatus and do a one-man show just telling stories, because it'd be quite nice to play me instead of a lot of silly other characters.
Sure.
And I kind of find that I want to do that more these days. So I started writing it, and very quickly realized I had about 10 hours of material. So
wow.
I thought that would test the patience of any theater audience and my endurance. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll just write a book. And I started scribbling away, and I thought, I'll do this over the next few years. And then this thing called COVID happened, and it kind of gave me the opportunity to, in lockdown, to write it. What would have taken me 5 years, probably it took me about 5 months.
Wow. Just came together that quickly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of stories I knew I wanted to tell, and the obvious things, the embarrassing things that have happened to you in your life, those are the ones I seem to remember most of all. And some of the mistakes and some of the good things. But most of all, for me, it was less about being a memoir or an autobiography, a more kind of romp through 4.5 decades in the wonderful worlds I've managed to inhabit, which have been, in theater and television and film. And I've worked with pretty much everybody and anybody, you name it. I've probably worked with them, or know them, or met them, or socialized with them. So I thought, well, that's kind of good on a gossipy level. And it's kind of, I don't know, I just felt like it was the right time. I mean, I don't normally look backwards at all. I'm always looking forwards and right in front of me. So I guess the pandemic made us all stop and look around a bit. And then I looked over my shoulder and went, okay, let's look at this path. And I was really determined that whatever I wrote was not of just interest to people in show business or who like show business, but would be of interest to anyone. And the stories had to appeal to everyone. And so I was quite ruthless. And it's less a sort of step by step, and then I did this, and then I did that, and then I did, because that's kind of boring. It's boring to me, and I think it would be boring to anyone. And so I made sure that every chapter, I think there are 38 chapters in the book, and they're not particularly long. Some of them are longer than others, and some of them are a couple of pages long. But I wanted there to be a really good story, at least one in every chapter, a good anecdote or a good funny story. And there's a couple of chapters that are more emotional and more serious in the middle that are kind of more life and death stuff. But mostly it's really a good, fun, I think, light read. This is why we're releasing it now, because it's a great beach read. It's a great summer read. Yeah. As opposed to, releasing it over Christmas when everybody releases books and you're competing with Michelle Obama and people like that. And by the way, I think this is funnier than her book, much as I love her.
Oh, really? Michelle, if you're listening, Michelle, I didn't say it, he did. So, now she listened.
Now, I've frozen on my screen. I don't know why. That is.
I can still see you. Yeah, you're good.
I'm good. Okay, yeah. I've frozen on one of them and not on the other.
Oh, bizarre.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm still talking, so there we go.
No, it's my producer just said maybe Michelle heard it and froze your screen. Maybe she, took you to disparaging comment and froze the screen for you. I wonder, when you arrange that, when you look back over 4 decades, did you decide to arrange the book chronologically, or is it kind of skip?
No, I did. I mean, I start the opening chapter is actually it isn't completely where it begins, because it was a good story that I rather liked, a really good fart story actually. So that kind of thought was a good opening, and then I go back a little, but I don't linger a lot on my childhood and all that. Only if it's interesting, and the interesting part is that I discovered late in my life, like in my 20s, that my whole family had been involved in show business, which I knew nothing about, because my father and his generation hadn't, and my mother hadn't, and I thought I was doing something new. And it turns out that my entire family on my father's side had been in show business for centuries.
Wow.
And my grandfather had a vaudeville act with Charlie Chaplin.
Wow.
So that makes it into the book because it's an interesting story. And the reason he didn't come to Hollywood when Chaplin offered him twice contracts to come are even more bizarre. I mean, absolutely insane why he didn't come. One of the reasons was that his father, my great grandfather, told him that Hollywood was a passing fad, that the movies was going to be a passing fad.
It's like Bitcoin. It's not gonna...
Yeah. So there was no history of psychic ability in my family or prescience. So in a funny way, in a romantic way, there's a sort of thread throughout the book is that I'm picking up where a generation before me left off, and I came and did the things that he might have done, and I actually worked in the studios that Chaplin built a couple of times. And I remember thinking it was a very romantic notion that, gosh, my grandfather could have been doing this 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And by the way, I never met him. He died about, I think, 4 or 5 years before I was born. So he was always just, a figure that I'd heard about. And there's some great stories that I heard about him too, that he sounds like quite a piece of work. But I don't linger that much on those things because it's not that interesting where I went to school and that, unless there's a good story,
Were there, obviously we don't want to spoil anything in the book. We'll talk a little bit more about that too, but were there things, stories, anecdotes that you decided for one reason or another, I'm not going to put that in? Or did you? Yeah, there was a revision stage. Obviously there is when you write anything. And there was a couple of things. There was a chapter that came out that I just felt wasn't in keeping with the book. And there was a story about a very well-known actress and a director husband. And I felt like it wasn't terribly flattering about them. It's funny. It's very funny, the story. And it amused me to write it. But I kind of felt when I read it back, and my editor and my publisher agreed, that it felt a bit
out of keeping. I only really eviscerate about 4 people in the book. And by the way, when I say eviscerate, I mean obliterate. I don't hold back, and I name names. And I think if anyone's thinking, oh God, another Hollywood biography, who cares? Yeah, you're right to think that. But I think that does separate this, and what a number of my peers and quite well-known actors and directors have said, having read it, is that they're delighted that I name names. And one of them's dead, so they can't sue me.
Well,
but the other 3 or 4 aren't. But I think that's important to because I am generally very generous, and I like to kind of tell things how they are and be honest. And there's a lot of people I rehabilitate, people who people think are nightmare and have terrible reputations, and I say, actually, in my experience, they were fantastic. And so I do make up for the ones that I obliterate. But I think that I'm at a stage in my life, I don't mind admitting how old I am. I'm in my mid-60s, where I can actually do that. And I do it on sets. If I see bad behavior on a movie set or a TV set, I quietly I don't make a fuss of it, but I quietly say, look, that's not how to behave. And, this is, just do this. It's much nicer. And I think that everybody has a responsibility to stop people behaving badly. We live in an era where bad behavior has been allowed to go on, and it's divided this country, it's divided the world, and I'm not pretending I'm changing it, but just me personally, I don't want to live with it anymore. I don't want to be around it. So whether it's show business, whether it's any business, any form of work, any social thing, don't do that. Don't be unpleasant to people. Just, if you don't like them, just, move away and let them get on with their thing. But I can't stand all this kind of getting notoriety out of being unpleasant.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want this book to be sour or bitter. And I hope that when I do eviscerate these people, I do it in a humorous way. And it's almost to saying, why are you doing this? Why are you behaving like this?
Right.
The two people are major stars. And I'm like, why? Why do you have to do that? And I don't feel bad about that. And as I say, mostly it's very generous about people. And I'm having said that, the person I'm hardest on in the book is myself. So if I'm going to be the butt of the jokes, and I'm going to tell you and bare my soul about the things I've done that are ridiculous or embarrassing, then I'm prepared to do it for other people who have done worse things.
You mentioned your age and that you feel like, hey, you'll tell someone quietly, on a set or whatever you're working, you can't behave like that. As an earlier actor, when you're younger, that could have ended your career. When did you kind of feel that you were, confident enough to the point where you could do that? And not to say that you wouldn't have done it when you were younger. I'm just saying, did you reach a point in your career where you're like, I'm not having this behavior, and started really hammering people like that?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. If I'd written this in my 20s, I certainly wouldn't have done that. And by the way, I would have had nothing to write about my 20s. So it's a moot point. But no, I think you're always sort of thinking, oh God, I can't say it, because you've got to be careful and you want to work again. But first of all, the people I do eviscerate, I don't want to work with again and never want to encounter again. So that doesn't matter. And secondly, yes, my age is a part of it. And I think I've earned that. I think I've earned the right to do that. And, without putting too fine a point on it and being vulgar about it, I don't need to work again. So I'm in a position where I could have retired 5 years ago. So I love working, and I continue to work, and hopefully will till the day I drop. But I don't feel that same compulsion that I've got to tiptoe around on eggshells and avoid being kind of honest, because it's not even being difficult. I think honesty ultimately works, and if people respect that you're being honest and not sort of nasty about things, I don't think anyone's going to say, "Go, I don't want to work with them," or "Let's put him on a blacklist."
Right.
And if they do, they're not the sort of people I want to be around anyway. So
that's a good way to look at it. Absolutely. If you're listening right now, we are talking with actor Jim Piddock all about his career and his brand new book that you can get starting March 23rd. We always recommend going to your local bookstore. If you want to get it online, that's cool too. But if you can find it at your local bookstore, and I guess they can get it directly through your website as well, correct, Jim?
Yeah, my website, jimpiddock.com, www.jimpiddock.com. That's Piddock, which is often misspelt. But I mean, I hate to plug anyone, but Amazon is obviously easy. I click, bang, done. I agree with you. I'd love for you to go to your local bookstore. But the truth is, I think the way that the book world works now is this is print on demand, like most books, and so there are some bookshops that will have it, or bookstores, as you say, but mostly it's and God, we've got lazy. You just go online, you click on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, whoever it is, and then it's there the next day or the day after. And it is awful because I love bookshops, but needs must.
Yeah. We'll put a link to your website in our show notes. If you're listening to this right now, if you're hearing it after the fact in the podcast form, go down to the bottom of the show notes. We'll have a link to Jim's website where you can get that book. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come right back and continue our chat with Jim Piddock all about his book. You can get
this
on.
Is Kevin Conroy.
That's
the
the
voice
wrong
of
one I
Bat.
want to hit. There we go. Let's hit the right one. We'll come right back right after this on the Big 550 KTRS. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
What will the future bring from Nintendo? More hits like The Legend of Zelda. Sports hits like ice hockey. Nintendo has the most video game hits like Hogan's Alley and Donkey Kong Classics, and more like Excite Bike and RC Pro-Am. And you can play them only on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you're playing with power.
Announcing a new arrival.
Mr. Potato Head.
Oh, that's me.
Congratulations. It's a potato.
It's Mr. Potato Head family. There's Mr., Mrs., and baby too. Potato Head family, I love you. With eyes and ears and hats and noses, you can put them in so many poses and change them easy as 1, 2, 3. Mr. Potato Head family, I like you, funny baby.
Mr. Potato Head family, new from Hasbro Preschool.
You're going to look so pretty, my friend Becky. There, your hair is so soft. As soon as I dress you, we'll be all ready to go out. Hi, this is my friend Jenny. I love to play with my friend Mandy. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
My friend Becky, my friend Mandy.
Porter Restaurant and Bar is located at 126 East Main Street in downtown Belleville, Illinois. For operating hours and menu, go to porterrestaurant.com.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
We are back. Geek to Me Radio brought to you by our movie sponsor, Marcus Theaters. If you go to the website, marcustheaters.com, you can find the closest Marcus Theaters or Movie Tavern location to you. You can also order your tickets right from there. You can check out movie reviews. I've got their website pulled up, and they've got a whole bunch of movies they're playing. They've got still their Academy Award nominated films that you can see starting at $5. You can check those out. They've got, obviously, the new movies coming out, The Lost City with Sandra Bullock, and I'm a sucker for a Sandra Bullock movie. Anything she's in. I don't know why. Channing Tatum is also in it. That's true. The Batman is still out, obviously. You just heard Kevin Conroy's voice. Different Batman, but the Batman is out. They've got their $5 picture showcase. They got their Kids Dream series. While you're there, make sure you sign up for their Magical Movie Rewards program that you actually get points for buying your movie tickets, for buying your snow caps, for buying your popcorn, and then you can use those points to get more snow caps and popcorn. It's a great system. Go to the website, once again, marcustheaters.com. You can check that out. Also, download the app, and you can order your tickets on the road. If you're on your way and, hey, let's go see a movie, pull up the app, order your tickets, order your concessions, too. They'll be ready and waiting for you when you arrive. It's all one stop right from the app. Once again, marcustheaters.com for the greatest movie-going experience in the galaxy. We're talking with actor Jim Piddock all about his book that's coming out. And also, we heard the voice of Kevin Conroy when we came back from break. You got to voice Alfred Pennyworth in Batman Under the Red Hood, which must have been pretty cool.
Yeah, I've done a lot of different Batman incarnations, voiceovers. Yeah, I've done Alfred Pennyworth. I've done, I must have done so many of them.
Dr.
It's weird.
Savannah in Brave and the Bold, too.
Yeah. boy, yeah, good. You remembered it because I didn't. Yeah, it's voiceover stuff is I talk about in the book is my friend Kate Burton told me as an actress said it's God's gift to actors. Voiceover. It's, you can show up in your t-shirt and shorts. It's a lovely world. I've got friends who make an incredible living just doing voiceovers, and voiceover actors are interesting because I find them less competitive and less kind of needy. I suppose if you're a voiceover actor, you just need to be heard. If you're an on-camera actor, you need to be seen and heard. Right. So your ego is twice as big. So it's kind of, I love that world, and I've been lucky enough to do a lot of voiceovers. And there's a whole chapter on voiceover and some insane stories. That Ethan Cohen called me out of the blue to do a voiceover, a 90-minute voiceover for the director's cut of Blood Simple. And I got the phone call, and I'd never met him or heard of him. I knew who he was, obviously. And I answered the phone, didn't recognize the number. And he said, this is Ethan Cohen. And I thought, which of my friends is playing this joke? But it's a bad, obscure and esoteric joke. And then he said, I just think that you'd be perfect to do this character I've written called Kenneth Loring, who's a fictitious, he has this company called Forever Young Films, and he's a film expert. And Joel and I, we hate doing director's cuts, and we're doing releasing the Blood Simple, and we'd love you to be this character for 90 minutes and talk your way through the movie. Would you be interested? And I'm like, yeah. And he sent me the script, and it was brilliantly insane, absolutely brilliant. And it was a 90-minute monologue that we recorded in a studio in Santa Monica over the course of about 2 days. And the guy knows nothing about film. It's very clear right on. So he's sort of talking absolute nonsense, saying, well, that sweat on the actors' faces is movie sweat, which, as you know, is drawn from Palomino horses. And this scene was actually shot upside down because they needed to get the effect of the car driving on the road. So it was just absolutely mental. And then the guy completely just gives it all up and then starts talking about his life. And he goes mad during the course of this director's commentary. So by the end of the film, he's literally screaming about how he was attacked by Nick Nolte one time, and Ruth Jablava, the screenwriter, attacked him with a stiletto heel. It's absolutely mental. And they did this, and we recorded it, and they put out the director's cut of the film, which is, a classic film, Blood Simple. And I didn't hear any more of it, and I did keep the secret that I wasn't Kenneth Loring until someone revealed it. So I can now. And then about a year later, I ran into Joel and Ethan at a party. And again, I'd only met Ethan working in that one time, and they were just beaming. And they said, oh my God, you'll never guess. We got these letters, and one of them said this guy had bought this DVD, and it's a bootleg copy because there's this guy with a terrible British accent who says he knows all about films, and he knows nothing. And you should sue him because he's destroying your film. And they said they were so happy. They said that's exactly the reaction we wanted. They're the ultimate practical jokers. So it was bizarre. So that's one of my voiceover stories. It's good that makes the book.
And you did a lot of voiceover roles. Obviously, you were in several of the Lion King games. You were Zazu.
Yes.
The new Batman adventures we mentioned. We have Batman Brave and the Bold, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which Rob Paulsen was one of the. We've had him on the show several times. I mean,
love Rob.
When you're doing those cartoons like Batman, like Turtles and everything like that, it's got to be a lot of fun. You're just, not only is it, like you said, the voiceover, you show up in T-shirt and shorts, but it must be like you're a little kid. You get to do whatever you want, basically. If you're
Absolutely. It's really freeing. And Rob is brilliant. I met Rob doing an on-camera commercial when I first started. I'd been in Hollywood like maybe a month, and I met him. And we hit it off immediately and sort of started talking. And his career has gone one way and mine's gone a completely different way. But he is so talented. Yeah. And so, I have such admiration for people that are that versatile. I can do certain things, voice work. But it's very freeing and it's fun and it's playtime. And you mentioned The Lion King. The chapter on voiceover is called A Finger Up My Nose because I had to do Zazu, which was originally played by Rowan Atkinson. Mm-hmm. And Rowan is much more nasal than me. And I can actually do a good impersonation of him. So it sounds a bit like him, but I'm not as nasal. So I had to do the whole thing with a finger up my nose so that I sounded more nasal.
Oh my God.
And I would alternate nostrils so that I didn't get one larger than the other by the end of it all. So it took, it took a long time to record. But yeah, that was it was interesting, an entire job with a finger up my nose.
And the video game voiceover work, we've talked to several voice actors say it's almost night and day doing an animated feature versus a video game, because a lot of times you're recording it by yourself. Did you find it to be a good experience doing video games? Obviously, the Metal Gear series, we mentioned Zazu and some of them.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid was, I mean, I don't play video games, but this is huge. It was massive.
Yeah.
And I did most of that because it's a lot of my stuff as Major Zero is instructional on my own. But David, who plays Snake, was there a lot of the time, and some of the other actors, and I met them. And Dave is also a writer, so we would just chat about writing most of the time. Go in and record for a couple of hours and come out and talk about writing, and so that was a very different experience. But they're all, nowadays, sometimes you're doing it from home too, which is I don't really like, because I think I don't like the isolation, and it's all become a bit, and then COVID underlined that, and it became even more necessary to do things. I recorded my walk-in closet because it's the best sort of sound in there. But it's, I love going in to meet people and hang out for a day and do voiceover stuff, or hang out for 10 minutes. Sometimes it is.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned COVID. That's obviously changed everything, because everybody had to quickly get the equipment put in studio, soundproof something. It's great that people were able to work through COVID, but at the same time, that did kind of drastically change, because a lot of people say they didn't go back to ensemble recording like they used to do, and it kind of isn't as, when you don't have the other actor to play off of across the booth, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it is. It's not as good, I mean, I'm an introvert, and I'm quite happy to be on my own little bubble most of the time. But I do really crave the fact that we don't get together as much as a community. And that's that's one of the things I loved when I was in New York about the theater community, is you see people every day, run into them on the street and bars and restaurants and blah, blah, blah. And in Hollywood the same thing. You kind of there is a community, and whilst I've made a kind of a real effort not to get caught into the factory town thing, and I've tried to live as normal a life outside of show business as possible, I think it does give you a sense of a family, a sort of showbiz family that I like. I mean, one of the things in the book that emerged, and I didn't set out to write this, is that it was very clear that I've had a lifelong search for family, and that's a theme in the book that's a bit more sort of serious, I suppose, or an undercurrent of, and so every theatre company or every TV kind of cast or movie cast, it became a new family for me, and until I found what was my family, and then that became a different dynamic. But I do talk about the importance of family and different families and what the meaning of family is, because I think it is a sort of essential part of our lives. And now I've frozen on both my screens. Oh, God. Anyway, sorry. There's only people watching this.
You're still moving on my end, so I think we should be good. Did he freeze over there? No. Yeah, Joey says you're good on our end too. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, both my screens of me are frozen, and they're
you
both
didn't
looking
even say
at
anything
different.
about Michelle Obama that time, so I don't know what to blame it on now.
No, it's not her this time. God, she's guilt-free on that one.
Right. And talking about family is the perfect segue, because I wanted to talk about Family Tree, which I love that series. Yeah. But we do need to take another quick. You're still okay to stick with us for a while, yes?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. We're gonna continue talking with Jim Piddock about his career in Hollywood. We're going to take another quick commercial break. We're going to come right back and continue our chat. Stay tuned. Geek to Me Radio every Sunday night on the Big 550 KTRS.
New Wicket W. Warwick and Princess Nisa, each sold separately from Kenner's Star Wars Return of the Jedi collection.
Let's get this mess cleaned up.
New from Kenner, Power Movers trucks, each sold separately.
Watch, when I move this switch, my Power Movers hauler lifts the load all by itself. When I move it again, it lowers without batteries. Wow.
fire truck to the rescue. Oh, no, I'm stuck.
Don't worry, tow truck's here.
Wow, that's power.
Yeah, they're power movers.
Fire truck, hauler, and tow truck, each sold separately. Power movers, new from
My Little Pony waterfall. I always bathe my little pony there. My Little Pony waterfall. I love to shampoo her pretty hair. My Little Pony waterfall has a rainbow and a sun and a little duck too. My Little Pony waterfall. Little pony, it's all for you. My Little Pony. I love you, My Little Pony.
My Little Pony waterfall comes with My Little Pony sprinkles from Hasbro.
Alvin, Simon, Theodore, rise and shine. Oh, your concert was fantastic, but don't be late for the baseball game.
Alvin, Simon, and Theodore each sold separately. Cowboy and baseball outfits also sold separately.
Theodore won't get up.
Anybody seen my vest?
Alvin's got it, Dad.
Alvin!
Villa has it all.
Hey, you guys, this is Raphael of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And after we've kicked Shredder's butt, we all get down the sewer and we listen to Geek to Me Radio. Turtle Power!
It only felt appropriate to come back with a Rob Paulsen return liner after we just got done chatting about him. If you are a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan, or if you like the Kevin Eastman comics, if you like comics in general, best place to get your comics is at our official comic book sponsor, Bugs Comics and Games. You can check them out in O'Fallon, right there off of Bryan Road. Larry Quiggins, the owner, is a friend of mine. I was going to him when I was able to ride my bike to his store when I was in junior high, up to his store on West Florissant. And he's just reopened Bugs Comics, and it's the nostalgia trip. It's seeing him behind the counter, and nothing's changed. If you're looking for a comic, I love it because people will bring in their children, and he was like, hey, what kind of comics are you looking for? And they like Spider-Man, so he shows them, okay, we've got these Spider-Man comics and these. What kind of, gets a feel for it. It's like having a personal comics concierge. And also, you can join their Avengers Club. If you go to their website, which is bugscomicsandgames.com, you can click on the Avengers Club. You can start saving money on your comic books, your back issues, your supplies, your games, all that kind of stuff. With inflation going where it is and gas where it is, save every bit of money you can. Start doing it on the hobby that you love at bugscomicsandgames.com. Check out their selection of new comics, back issues, all that and more. Make sure you give their Facebook page a like, Bugs Comics and Games on Facebook. Larry and Tim will be very glad that you did. Bugs Comics and Games for the best comic book experience you can possibly get in the greater St. Louis area, bugscomicsandgames.com. We are chatting for this hour with Jim Piddock about his new book he's got coming out, Caught with My Pants Down and Other Tales from a Life in Hollywood. Before we took that last break, he mentioned family. It was a great segue into Family Tree, which was a brilliant series. Christopher Guest, you've been in several of his movies. You played Mr. Fister. It was great. As soon as you popped up in that episode, my wife and I were like, oh. It's always great to see you coming into projects like that.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about, I would assume Christopher didn't make you audition. He's like, hey, I've got this role for you, knowing the relationship you guys have.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know if you knew this, but I actually wrote the show. I wrote the show with Chris.
See, I should look that up. I apologize.
It came about. I'd done 3 Christopher Guest movies. I'd done Best in Show, Mighty Wind, and For Your Consideration. And then Chris hadn't done anything for, about 6 or 7 years. And he sort of was in semi-retirement. And I got a call out of the blue, and he said, do you want to have lunch? I said, yeah, sure. And we went to lunch in West Hollywood. And he said, I've got this idea about a family tree kind of search, because I've done it in my own family, and I sort of got interested in researching my own family. And say, Ancestry.com's so popular, and there's shows like Who Do You Think You Are? What do you think about this as a film? And I said, I like the whole arena, but it's not a film. It's a TV show, because a family tree by its nature has branches, and so it's episodes. It's different episodes. And that you couldn't have a singular. It's not a singular story. It goes up and down and around. So we talked some more, and we started sort of meeting and bashing around ideas, and we were making each other laugh, and we decided to start writing it, and we kind of wrote something, and we then went out and sort of tried to sell it. So we went to London first because we wanted to do a co-production. NBC Universal International wanted to do it, and they sent us to London, and we pitched it, and to BBC wanted to do it, and then we came back, and then HBO wanted to do it. So we kind of did this co-production, and we spent a long time writing that show, even though it's, you know, a lot of Christopher Guest stuff is improvised. We spent a long time working on it and making sure that everything was in place. So the outlines are really detailed, and you can't go off the rails. It actually takes longer than to write scripted scenes with dialogue, because we offer some dialogue suggestions and stuff, but it actually takes longer, believe it or not. And Chris said to me, for that character, Mr. Fister, which is kind of obviously a sort of double entendre name, he said, because we decided he would be Chris O'Dowd's kind of mentor and neighbor, and he said, what kind of silly voice are you going to do, and what you know, how you and how you're going to look? And I said, I don't know yet how I'm going to look, but it'll be weird. And it was like absolutely bleach dyed blonde hair with a moustache. It was a very odd look. And what voice are you going to do? And I said, well, you know, I keep doing different silly voices in your movies. What's the least funny accent that you can think of? And he said, we talked for a while, and we both concluded that South African was the least funny accent because of all the connotations of apartheid. And it's such an annoying accent. I'd actually done it in my first ever movie, Lethal Weapon 2.
Yes, you did.
And so I had done it, but that was a serious movie and it had a point to it. But this was a running character throughout a series. So he started saying, well, how would you do some of the lines? And I started doing it in the South African, and it made Chris laugh. And of course, then it got stuck. And I basically chose my accent and character for that series based on a dare, essentially. It's insane. It's insane. And there's no reason for him to be from South Africa. We never explain it. We never. It's just this odd guy who talks like this. And hello, how are you doing? Oh, my friend, come in. And he has an antique shop, and he's just this weird guy with this South African accent. And it still amuses me to this day that it came about that way.
You mentioned Lethal Weapon 2, that scene. I obviously recognized you from that as well, when you had Joe Pesci and Danny Glover right there. The scene, obviously, the movie, it's a serious type of situation, but obviously that was a very comical moment. And having Joe Pesci and Danny Glover, just the way they, you know, he looks at Danny Glover and says, "You are." I can't imagine you couldn't have gotten through that scene 4 or 5 times without everyone just busting up laughing.
Well, they did. I didn't. It was my first film, so I was quite nervous, you know. And I knew that I could get a laugh with that line, but you're black, because you're black. I knew that would get a laugh if I did it right. And of course, it made Joe Pesci laugh every time. and then he repeated it many times in the movie later, and it became a kind of de facto catchphrase for the movie, which was bizarre. This was my first film. I had one scene. And my scene ended up with a catchphrase for the movie, and the movie became the best, the highest grossing movie of that year.
Yeah.
So it was like being thrown in at the deep end in the movie world. But yeah, I mean, they were laughing the whole time. I was being like, I've got to get through this. I've got to do this. And Dick Dono, the director, Richard Dono, was wonderful. He was just such a great director. It's so sad that we've lost him now.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, that's one of the directors too. Was there a story about any of your interactions with Richard in the book? Is he prolific?
I had dinner recently with a group of people, and one of them was Laura Schuler-Donner, his widow. And I said, you know, and I actually told him, because I'd met him a few times socially since doing the movie, and I actually said to him, "You are the most masculine man I know," in the positive way. And I want to be you when I grow up. He was in a non-toxic way, just the guy's guy. He was, but in a lovely way. And I said that to Lauren. I said, he was the most masculine man I've ever met in my life. And she said, you've hit the nail right on the head. She said he was. And he was just charming. And he was just a great guy in so many ways.
And you've done so many, when I look at your IMDb list of projects, 80s, you were in the Twilight Zone, Fame, the Tracy Ullman Show, Max Headroom. The 90s, you did Coach, Murder, She Wrote, Mad About You, Team Knight Rider. And then in the 2000s, Angel, Friends, Drew Carey. It's like, if there was a hot show in a decade, you made an appearance, which is kind of got to be a fun feeling as an actor to look at your IMDb list and be like, wow, I was in all these projects when they were like the highest rated shows on TV at the time.
Yeah, you didn't even get to ER, Friends, Law and Order, a Modern Family. I mean, literally, it's. I say in the introduction to the book, I say, this isn't an A-list autobiography or anything like that. It's a man who's just navigated through the corridors of Hollywood. It's a Zelig kind of book. But I say, if you stopped, 10 people on the street and said, do you know the name Jim Piddock? Probably one might say yes. And then you show them a picture and they go 5 or 6 would say, yeah. And then you give them a list of all the things I've either been in or written. About 9 or 10 would say, oh, yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's a weird kind of thing that I've been in this kind of slightly under the radar in many ways, but not under the radar, if you know what I mean. And also being a disguised character actor, I often look different. Apart from the accent's the thing that gives me away. And people often, come up to me and go, I know you from somewhere. And then you kind of go through that horrible thing of having to say, well, it might be because I'm an actor. And then they sort of say, well, are you sure? It's not, I don't know you from the hardware store. No, I don't think so. But yeah, it is bizarre when you, as you say, when you look at that resume, it's insane.
You were in a great episode of Angel, and it was a very emotional episode for, I'm sure, David Boreanaz to do those scenes, and you're right there with him as he's in this place, but you're this kind of this otherworldly being, no emotion at all shown. Were there difficult scenes during that episode that you remember either that David was struggling with, or did you have any issues with that episode at all?
No, not at all. I remember it being a very comfortable experience. Julie White, I think, was the other person in those scenes mostly. And no, not at all. No, I mean, I felt that was kind of a relatively trouble-free experience. I enjoyed doing that very much. And there was a show called Dollhouse, which I did, which is I became. There are very few things I'm in that I actually sort of become fans of, because I don't like watching myself, but I don't watch tons of things. My infinitely better half Annie watches everything, but I kind of I don't for whatever reason. And I became a huge fan of Dollhouse. I think it's an incredibly underrated, brilliant show.
When you're preparing for a part on a show, though, if you don't watch it previously, does any of your character work come right from the script and the directors, or do you go back and try to watch a couple episodes of a show before you're on it, or how does that work? Your process?
I sometimes do. Yeah, I sometimes do. I mean, there's a show called Party Down, which was on Starz, which I became a fan of before I did the show because I got cast in it, and they said, "Do you want to do this show?" Like, out of the blue, they just called up and said, "Do you want to do it?" So yeah, sure, it sounds fun, and I liked the part. It was a lovely part, and I thought I better go watch it. And by the time I'd going in to shoot that, I'd literally watched every episode that had been on, because I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I'm so happy they're reviving it and bringing it back, because they did 2 seasons, I think, and it's sort of like Freaks and Geeks to me. It was up there with the very best of great television that got 2 seasons, and everybody great was in it, and everybody went on to do bigger and I'm not going to say better things, but bigger things that they became known for. I don't think very few things are better than that show. So I love that show, and still in touch with the writers and producers and people in it, a lot of them. But that's a brilliant show that I became a massive fan of.
And I should mention, I'm being very selfish. If you're listening right now, if you've got a question for Jim, you can feel free to call in on the KTRS hotline. It's 314-931-5877. You can also text us at 84126. If you do text us, just put your name in the text so I can actually give you the shout out for Brian from Wentzville or whoever you might be. We can ask your question to Jim for you via the text lines if you'd like. Talking about that Party Down, my wife immediately, when she knew I was interviewing you, she goes, Is he going to come back when they bring the show back? Has anyone contacted you about bringing your character back on?
No, the bastards. They didn't ask me. But they did send me. I just was exchanging some messages with one of the creators recently, and they very kindly said we were on set doing this, and we were talking about our favorite guest stars of the first 2 seasons, and your name came up. And I said, to which I said as one of the least favorite, but they said no. So that you made me nervous now by saying, if you've got any questions, because those things always make me nervous. Because if you don't get any, then it's really sad if no one wants to ask a question. But if they don't, then we pretend that we're so many we couldn't do it because it was just
true.
So overwhelmed.
No, see, and again, sometimes because Joey will tell me after the show, he's like, you put that out and you got a couple texts and you didn't even pay attention because I've got tunnel vision. Like I said, I could talk to you for 2 hours and still have my own questions to get through. So I will try to be cognizant, though. If you're listening, that's not to say I'm going to ignore you. I will be cognizant and I will try to check the text and the phone lines. So if you do want to call in, feel free. We did get earlier on Chance from Atlanta called in. So Chance, hello. We appreciate your listening. He's watching the show online currently. One of the things I was going to ask you about was at your stage, you're very successful. You've gotten all these roles. You just mentioned you're in contact with the writers from here and there. Do you feel like in your career, you are at the point where if you were to say, if you really liked a show like Party Down, you want to be, you could just call the writer and say, hey, any chance? Or is that not kind of the person you are?
No, I'd never be that presumptuous. No, I because I've been in that position of writing and creating my own shows, and it's uncomfortable when you love someone and their work and there's just nothing for them. And it's nothing to do with them personally. Listen, I've written things that there's nothing for me in it. So, and I have to just go, well, you can't be in it, well, I want to be in it, but you can't. So there you go. And these are the conversations I have with myself at night. So I understand that I wouldn't ever want to put people in that position, and we all get it. It's all about what's written on the page and whether you're right for it or not. So no, I don't do that. I mean, if there's something I see that somebody's doing something, I think, oh, that'd be really fun to be on, I'll say to my manager or my agent, just keep a lookout for something, and then reach out rather than just sort of do the usual submission. But I'm at a point also in my career now where I either get offered something or I don't. I'm either on the list or I'm not, and how high I am on that list depends on whether I get to do it or not. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I've never liked auditioning, and I have a whole chapter in the book about auditions and some of the most horrendous auditions I've been through and some of the horrendous things I've done in auditions that are completely embarrassing on my behalf. Anyone who's aspiring to do this for a living, please read this book. It's a book of what to do and what not to do.
And again, the book is Caught with My Pants Down and Other Tales from a Life in Hollywood. We will have that link. And I think Joey said he's got your website and your social media handles up in the bottom feed. So if you're watching this, those are Jim's links there in the bottom of the feed right now that you can see. We're going to take our very last commercial break. We're going to come back. We're going to continue chatting with Jim, wrap things up in our conversations. We'll be right back. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS St. Louis.
Hot on the burner, goodies to cook. Let's take a look. Turkey is fine, guests right on time. We girls can do anything, right, Barbie?
Barbie Dream Kitchen smells like vanilla and comes with everything you see here. Barbie dolls sold separately. New.
TV. Check. Cosmic Arc cartridge. Check. Power. Yeah, power.
Cosmic Arc is a game cartridge for the Atari video system.
Meteor! I got it!
The Cosmic Arc searches out strange creatures on distant planets.
Beam them up!
But the deeper the arc travels in space, the tougher it gets.
We may never get back to Earth! Boys, clean your room. We're back.
Cosmic Arc by Imagic. The video system must be bought separately and connected to the TV by your parents.
Barbie Beauty Fun. Welcome to the Barbie Beauty Salon. Barbie's here to have her hair done. Well, we've got the latest beauty supplies.
You put the salon together. Great Shake Barbie dolls sold separately.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com. name's Lucy Davis. I play Etta Candy in Wonder Woman, and this is Geek to Me Radio. Come and listen. We're very, very nice.
Speaking of nice, a very nice place to visit if you've been cooped up. Now that restrictions are starting to get lifted, you want to stretch your legs and travel. May I suggest the greater St. Charles area? You can go to the website discoverstcharles.com. That's discoverstcharles.com. It's like taking a trip back in time. The cobblestone streets, the little shops that are these small-owned businesses all along Main Street. Great places to eat, great places to shop if you're wanting to find something unusual, a gift for a friend or something like that. If you're wanting to travel, maybe you're listening to this and you're watching us and you're not in the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, go to the website, plan your trip. They've got accommodations to match any budget, any comfort level. If you want to camp and be rustic, if you want a hotel with 5-star accommodations connected to a casino, they have that in St. Charles as well. Like I said, the food's great. If you're a history buff, there's something for everybody. Start your trip by going to the website, discoverstcharles.com. Great place to visit no matter what time of year it is. As we always say, it's always an historically good time. Very proud to have them as the official sponsor, the premier sponsor for Geek to Me Radio. Chatting for just a little bit longer here. The hour has flown by, talking with actor Jim Piddock about his book that's coming out on March the 23rd. I got to ask, you've acted in so many great TV shows and film. You've worked with some of the best people in the industry. Is there anyone you haven't had the chance to work with who you really have wanted to work with yet?
Someone else asked me that recently, and I was completely stumped. I said, that's a great question because I've never thought about it. And I just off the cuff said Matt Damon, simply because I like him as an actor. I think he's smart, and I think he'd be someone that would be fun to work with. There are people who your audience may not know. I mean, who I just admire so much, and I thought that they'd be fun. And they may not be. They might be horrendous people. But there's an Australian comedian called Jim Jeffries who's done a few Netflix specials, and I think he's brilliant. And he amuses me endlessly. And I like to work with people who make me laugh. I've been very lucky. You know, when I was growing up, I was a big Monty Python fan.
Oh, yes.
And it influenced my career enormously. And about 25 years ago, I got to do a film with Eric Idle, which is one of the worst films ever made in the world, called Burn, Hollywood, Burn, an Alan Smithy film. And we had like all these scenes it was him, me, and Naomi Campbell, the supermodel. And one of the scenes, one of the 17 films ended up in the movie, and I've never been so happy to be cut out of a movie. It was so star-studded, it's ridiculous. I mean, people should look this up. Everybody was in it. Stallone, Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, it was just literally all the big names of that period were in it. What came for me from that film, the great value, was that Eric and I became immediate friends, and he's probably my best friend in Los Angeles, and we spend summers together in Provence in France, and I've worked with him many times since, and so that was kind of a real joy to actually meet one of your idols, literally, Eric Idle, and find that they were just as great. But I have worked with so many people I admired: Michael Caine, Anthony Hopkins, all these people that I admired so much growing up, that I don't feel like I've been shortchanged. Tom Hanks I've worked with, and sort of met socially a few times, and just so many people, and it's endless. It's endless. So there's nobody I'm going, oh God, I missed that boat, or only if they're dead, now.
Right. Yeah. Sure. And it's interesting because we always kind of have a joke amongst my friends. It's like if there's a big movie like a Harry Potter, it's like every British actor who's ever been acting is in a movie like Harry Potter or something like that. And I was talking to somebody about
Except me.
Yes. And I was talking to somebody about Doctor Who, and I said, I don't think Jim's ever done Doctor Who either. I looked on your IMDb. I don't think you ever have done an episode. Are you a Whovian? Do you like Doctor Who even?
I saw the very first episode of Doctor Who when I was 7 years old.
Wow.
I loved it. I was in love with that show. And I'd make a great Doctor Who, by the way, if anyone's listening.
They are recasting.
I'd make a fantastic Doctor Who. And a friend of mine has played Doctor Who, Chris Eccleston.
Oh, yes.
I haven't been in that show, but to be honest with you, I haven't lived in England for 40 something years. So it's unlikely that they would cast me to be in Doctor Who. But yes, that is one. And as you say, the Harry Potter films, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a sore point.
Oh, is it?
A who's who of actors, and I wasn't in it. But then there are a few others who weren't. So.
See, I'm glad we're coming to the end of the show because I'm 2 strikes down now. I didn't know that you wrote Family Tree, and I brought up Harry Potter, so I'm glad we're ending the show before I get to my 3rd strike.
Which is your 3rd strike? I wrote Mascots too with Chris Guest too.
Yes,
and I wrote The Tooth Fairy. Anybody who's seen The Tooth Fairy, did you know that Jim Piddock wrote it? There you go.
See, there's a little bit of trivia you're learning as well on the show.
Yeah,
we've got about a minute left. We definitely want to make sure, again, that people pick up the book. It's on March 23rd. Caught with My Pants Down and Other Tales from a Life in Hollywood, part memoir, part tell-all. It sounds like just the stories you've shared with us today that I can't wait to read through the book and find out all the other stuff that we haven't heard. Is there anything else that you've got coming up, projects that you're working on that we can talk about?
Yes, I've got a film coming out very soon, well, this year or early next year, called The Queen Mary, in which I play the captain of the Queen Mary in the 1930s. It's a supernatural thriller. And I'm about to, this summer, shoot a film that I wrote with Jeremy Irons and Minnie Driver called Frankel. It's kind of an English sea biscuit about a racehorse. And I just saw a question. Jim would make a good governor in The Walking Dead. There you go.
Yeah, if they were to do something like that, yeah. That's
Great
true.
casting idea. I don't really watch The Walking Dead, but I've seen a few episodes.
Yeah, the governor's a bad guy, so if you don't mind playing a villain.
That's what I've been doing a lot lately. But yes, that was interesting. My face is more suited to terrify people than amuse them these days.
I think you look great. And again, even though you say you're frozen a couple of times, we've all been able to see you in your full animated glory the entire episode. So
wow, lucky for you. I'm glad I haven't been able to see me at all.
Once again, it's been an absolute delight to talk to you. Jim Piddock, once again, we'll have a link in the show notes to your website as well. Like we said earlier, we always recommend, if you can, go to your local bookshop, try to pre-order it, and most places will be happy to do that. If not, Amazon's your key, and of course you can get it on the Kindle and everything else. As we're out of time, Jim, if you don't mind hanging on for just a few seconds after the show ends, I have a special favor to ask of you. For those of you listening, thank you to my sponsors. Thank you to Marcus Theaters, Bugs Comics, Greater St. Charles. Thank you to Joey V for, if you're watching this, Joey's the reason you're able to see this. So thank you to him for all his hard work behind the scenes. And until next week, my friends.
It's not in the way you watch I zombie. It's not in the way you watch The Flash. It's not in the way you love Scotty Young Art. It's not in the way you play Mario Kart. It's not in the way you look when you make Game of Thrones references. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, St. Louis. Good night.
The Big 550.